There is a spice sitting in nearly every kitchen cabinet in America right now. Most people sprinkle it on oatmeal or stir it into coffee without a second thought. It costs about $4. It has been used in medicine for over 4,000 years, and in 2013, researchers at a university laboratory put it on inflamed brain cells, the kind of inflammation linked to Alzheimer's disease, and watched those inflammation markers drop by up to 50%. Not a pharmaceutical, not an infusion, not a compound developed in a lab, a spice. The same one you probably walked past this morning on your way to the coffee maker. The spice is cinnamon. But, and this is what nobody tells you, there are two types. One protects your brain, the other may quietly be damaging your liver. And if you're over 60, that distinction is not a detail, it's the entire story. Here's what's happening inside your brain right now that you cannot feel. Your brain has its own immune system. It doesn't rely on the white blood cells circulating through your bloodstream. Instead, it has its own resident defense force, a type of cell called microglia. Microglia are tiny mobile cells scattered throughout your brain. Their job is critical. They patrol your neural tissue, clean up damaged cells, fight infection, and clear waste. When you're younger, microglia do this job quietly and efficiently. They activate when needed, do their work, and then stand down. The system is precise, controlled, self-regulating. After 60, something changes. Microglia become increasingly sensitized. They begin to activate more easily, more frequently, and here's the problem: they stop standing down. Instead of brief, targeted responses, they shift into a state of chronic, low-grade activation. Neuroscientists call this microglial priming. When microglia stay activated, they release a steady stream of pro-inflammatory molecules. The two most damaging are TNF-alpha and interleukin, 6-IL-6. These are not abstract laboratory terms. TNF-alpha directly damages the synaptic connections between your neurons. IL-6 accelerates the breakdown of brain tissue. Together, they create an internal environment where neurons struggle to communicate, repair themselves, or survive. This process is called neuroinflammation, and in the aging brain, it's not an occasional event, it's the background condition. It runs quietly, invisibly, without symptoms until the damage reaches a threshold that shows up as forgetfulness, confusion, or something far worse. A 2022 systematic review published in Nutritional Neuroscience, which analyzed 40 separate studies on cinnamon and brain function, confirmed that neuroinflammation is one of the primary pathways through which cognitive decline progresses after 60. And it confirmed something else, that cinnamon and its active compounds directly target this pathway. That's the central villain of everything we'll discuss today. Not aging itself, not genetics. Chronic microglial activation and the TNF-alpha and IL-6, it keeps pumping into your brain day after day, year after year. Every point I'm about to walk you through connects back to this single process: neuroinflammation driven by overactive microglia. It's the thread that ties together why cinnamon works, how it works, what type to use, what it does to your blood sugar, your BDNF levels, your hippocampus, all of it. The mechanism isn't complicated once you see it clearly, but almost nobody explains it in one place. That's what we're doing today. One, it silences the brain's master inflammatory switch. You've probably heard that inflammation drives disease, but in the brain there is a specific molecular switch that controls whether inflammation stays on or turns off. That switch is called NF-kappa B, nuclear factor kappa B. When NF-kappa B is activated in microglia, it triggers the production of TNF-alpha, IL-6, IL-1, beta, and nitric oxide, all the molecules that damage neurons. In 2013, researchers at a food science laboratory tested cinnamon extract directly on activated brain microglia BV2 cells that had been triggered into full inflammatory mode. The study was published in Food Chemistry. What they found was remarkable. Cinnamon extract at 50 micrograms per milliliter significantly suppressed production of all four inflammatory markers. TNF-alpha dropped, IL-6 dropped, IL-1 beta dropped, nitric oxide dropped. The mechanism? Cinnamon blocked NF-kappa B activation. It didn't just reduce the inflammation, it turned off the switch that was driving it. For someone over 60 whose microglia are already primed and chronically activated, this is not a trivial finding. This is a mechanism that targets the exact process accelerating cognitive decline in your brain right now. A quarter teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon in your morning coffee. That's where this starts. 2. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and reaches your hippocampus. Most supplements people take for brain health never actually reach the brain. The blood-brain barrier, a tightly sealed membrane surrounding your brain's blood vessels, blocks the vast majority of compounds in your bloodstream from entering neural tissue. It's designed that way. It protects your brain, but it also means that most of what you swallow has zero direct effect on your neurons. Cinnamon is different, and this is the part that makes it genuinely unusual. When you consume cinnamon, your liver metabolizes its primary compound cinnamaldehyde first into cinnamic acid, then into sodium benzoate. Sodium benzoate is a small, water-soluble molecule, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier readily. Researchers at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago confirmed this directly. They fed ground Ceylon cinnamon to mice and then measured sodium benzoate concentrations in the hippocampus, the brain's primary memory center. They found it. The compound was there in the brain after oral consumption of whole cinnamon. This is published. This is measured. This is not theoretical. And once sodium benzoate reaches the hippocampus, it does something specific and measurable. It stimulates hippocampal plasticity, the ability of memory neurons to form new connections. The Rush University team found that poor learning mice treated with cinnamon for 1 month improved their maze navigation time from 150 seconds to 60 seconds. The biochemical changes were equally clear. CREB, a protein critical for memory formation, increased. GABA5, a protein that inhibits learning, decreased. Your morning coffee, a quarter teaspoon of the right cinnamon, and a compound that reaches the one part of your brain you cannot afford to lose. 3. BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, is arguably the most important molecule in your aging brain that you've probably never heard of. BDNF is what keeps existing neurons alive. It's what enables new synaptic connections to form. It's what allows your brain to adapt, learn, and repair itself. After 60, BDNF levels decline. This decline correlates directly with cognitive decline. Lower BDNF means fewer surviving neurons, weaker connections, and a hippocampus that progressively shrinks. In 2013, a study published in the Journal of Neuroimmune Pharmacology demonstrated that cinnamon's metabolite sodium benzoate dose-dependently increased BDNF production in both human neurons and astrocytes in cell culture. More importantly, when mice were fed ground cinnamon orally, BDNF levels rose in vivo in the actual living brain. The pathway was identified. Sodium benzoate activates pKa protein kinase A, which in turn activates CREB, the same memory protein from the Rush University study. CREB then drives BDNF production. This is not a single isolated finding. This is a coherent biochemical chain. Cinnamon sodium benzoate crosses, blood-brain barrier activates, pKa activates, CREB increases, BDNF neurons survive and connect. Every link in that chain is published. Every link has been measured. For someone over 60 whose BDNF is already declining naturally, supporting this pathway is not optional. It's one of the most direct things you can do to slow the trajectory of neural loss. Or, here is something most neurologists know but rarely explain to patients. Alzheimer's disease is now referred to in research literature as type 3 diabetes. The connection between insulin resistance and cognitive decline is one of the strongest findings in modern neuroscience. Your brain runs on glucose. It uses more energy than any other organ in your body, roughly 20% of your total caloric expenditure. Insulin is the signal that allows brain cells to absorb and use that glucose efficiently. When insulin resistance develops, and it develops in millions of adults over 60, often without a diabetes diagnosis, brain cells can't access glucose properly. Energy production fails. Neurons starve. Amyloid plaques accumulate. Tau proteins tangle. The hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. A 2010 paper published in the Journal of Diabetes Science and Technology documented that Ceylon cinnamon aqueous extract inhibits tau aggregation and can actually promote disassembly of existing tau filaments, the very tangles found in Alzheimer's brains. Separately, Ceylon cinnamon has been shown to improve peripheral insulin sensitivity in multiple human clinical trials, reducing fasting glucose, improving insulin function, and stabilizing the metabolic fluctuations that send inflammatory signals to the brain. A 2013 PLOS One study went further. In rats fed a high-fat, high-fructose diet designed to induce insulin resistance, cinnamon supplementation reversed the insulin resistance, reduced anxiety behaviors, and restored glucose transporter expression in the hippocampus and cortex. If your blood sugar is even slightly unstable and after 60, the probability is high, cinnamon is addressing a mechanism that directly feeds the neuroinflammatory cascade we discussed at the beginning. 5. This is the one that connects everything together: amyloid beta plaques, the hallmark pathology of Alzheimer's disease. The protein deposits that accumulate between neurons disrupt communication, trigger microglial activation, and drive the neuroinflammation cycle. The 2015 Modi et al. Study published in PLOS One, conducted at Rush University Medical Center, tested oral cinnamon powder in 5 XFAD transgenic mice, a well-established Alzheimer's disease model. After 60 days of treatment, cinnamon-fed mice showed reduced amyloid beta burden in the hippocampus, decreased oxidative stress markers, suppressed neuronal apoptosis, cell death, and inhibited glial activation. And these mice performed better on memory and learning tests. Measurably, documentably better. The researchers also measured glutathione, the brain's primary antioxidant defense molecule, and found that cinnamon treatment increased its levels. Homocysteine, a toxic amino acid linked to brain damage, decreased. One compound, multiple converging mechanisms, all targeting the central villain, the neuroinflammatory cascade that quietly dismantles cognitive function after 60. Let me step away from the science for a moment, because what I really want you to understand isn't the mechanism, it's the implication. Everything I've just walked you through, the NF-kappa B suppression, the blood-brain barrier crossing, the BDNF increase, the insulin sensitivity improvement, the amyloid reduction, these are not 5 different supplements. They are not 5 different interventions. They are 5 effects of one compound from one spice that you can add to your morning in under 10 seconds. The reason this matters so much after 60 is that neuroinflammation is not a future risk. It is a present condition. Your microglia are already primed. TNF-alpha and IL-6 are already circulating in your neural tissue. The question is not whether this process is happening. The question is what you are doing about it today. I think about a particular kind of patient. The one who comes in saying the right things, eating well, walking daily, sleeping enough, and yet their cognitive assessments tell a different story. The processing speed is slower than it should be. The word retrieval hesitates a beat longer than last year. The MRI shows hippocampal volume that's trending in the wrong direction, quietly, year over year. And when you sit across from someone like that and look at their daily routine, the infrastructure is sound, the habits are good, but the biochemistry underneath isn't being addressed. The inflammation is running, the BDNF is declining, the insulin signaling in the brain is slightly off. And no one has connected those dots for them because no one screening says your microglia are chronically activated. There's a gap between doing things right and giving your brain what it specifically needs at the molecular level. That gap is where cognitive decline lives, not in neglect. In the space between good intentions and targeted action. Here's what makes this genuinely hopeful instead of frightening. Neuroinflammation is not permanent. It is not a one-way process. The brain's capacity to respond to intervention even after 60, even after 70, is supported by decades of research on neuroplasticity. The Rush University studies didn't work on young, healthy mice. They worked on aging mice, on Alzheimer's model mice, on poor learning mice. And the improvements were measurable within 30 to 60 days. Your brain is not a machine winding down. It is a living system that responds to what you give it. And what we're talking about today is giving it something it responds to at the molecular level through a pathway that has been documented in peer-reviewed journals. At a dose that fits in a teaspoon. Here are your 5 specific steps. All of them are available to you today. 1. Switch to Ceylon cinnamon immediately. There are 2 types sold in stores: Cassia cinnamon, Cinnamomum cassia, and Ceylon cinnamon, Cinnamomum verum. Cassia is cheap and widely available. It's what most grocery stores stock. But cassia contains high levels of coumarin, a compound that can cause liver damage with regular use. The Rush University researchers specifically identified Ceylon cinnamon as the purer variety. Look for Ceylon or true cinnamon on the label. If it doesn't say Ceylon, assume it's cassia. 2. Add 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon to your morning coffee or tea daily. The studies showing neurological benefit used consistent daily dosing, not occasional use. Stir it into coffee, mix it into oatmeal, blend it into a smoothie. The key is daily consistency. Cinnamaldehyde needs to be metabolized through your liver into sodium. Benzoate that process requires the compound to be consumed, not just inhaled. 3. Pair cinnamon with anti-inflammatory omega. 3 fats. Sodium benzoate is water-soluble and crosses the blood-brain barrier readily, but cinnamon's polyphenols are better absorbed alongside healthy fats. A breakfast that combines cinnamon with walnuts, flaxseed, or fatty fish creates a synergistic anti-inflammatory environment. You're addressing neuroinflammation from 2 directions simultaneously. 4. Stabilize your blood sugar with fiber at every meal. Cinnamon improves insulin sensitivity, but its brain protective effects are amplified when blood sugar isn't spiking throughout the day. Vegetables, legumes, whole grains, these keep glucose stable and reduce the inflammatory surges that activate microglia. Cinnamon works with your diet. It's not a substitute for it. 5. Move your body for 30 minutes daily and know why it matters now. Physical activity is one of the only proven ways to raise BDNF independently. Combined with cinnamon's BDNF supporting pathway through the PKA-CREB mechanism, daily movement and daily cinnamon create a dual BDNF signal that your aging hippocampus is specifically waiting for. A 2020 analysis from the Rush Memory and Aging Project found that consistent moderate physical activity reduced cognitive decline risk by 38%. Add cinnamon's molecular support to that, and you're building a genuine protective architecture. None of these require a prescription. None of them require a perfect lifestyle. They require you to understand what your brain actually needs, which you now do. Which of these 5 surprised you most, and have you been using cinnamon without knowing which type was in your cabinet? Check the label tonight and tell me in the comments what you find. I read every one. If someone you love is over 60 and starts their morning with coffee, send them this video, not because it will alarm them, because a 1/4 teaspoon of the right cinnamon might be the simplest, most evidence-backed thing they add to their routine this year. I make these videos because I believe every person deserves the conversation their doctor didn't have time to have. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Everything I've shared is based on published research from institutions including Rush University Medical Center, the NIH, and peer-reviewed journals in neuroscience and pharmacology. Your brain is unique before making any changes, especially if you're on medication or managing a diagnosis. Please talk to your own doctor. That conversation is always worth having.